The day Armaan Qureshi walked out of his office after 12 years, he didn't look back, not at the desk he built his life around, not at the glass walls that once made him feel important, and not at the door that silently closed behind him like a chapter he never imagined ending. What he carried instead was far heavier than a resignation letter. It was fear, exhaustion, and the fragile hope of a father who had just gambled everything for the one person who mattered more than his future, his daughter. If this kind of story touches something in you, take a moment to like, comment, kindness action, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like these remind us that kindness and second chances still exist. Armaan had always been the dependable one. The kind of man who showed up early, stayed late, and never complained. His job as a senior logistics manager at a major distribution company wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. It paid the bills, kept food on the table, and most importantly, funded the medical treatments his 8-year-old daughter, Meher, had needed ever since she was diagnosed with a chronic autoimmune condition at the age of 5. But stability came at a cost. Long hours turned into longer absences. Meetings replaced bedtime stories. Deadlines swallowed weekends whole. And somewhere in the middle of all that, Armaan began to notice something unsettling. His daughter had stopped asking him to stay. It happened gradually. Meher used to wait by the door when he got home, her small arms wrapping around his waist with a kind of pure joy that made everything else fade away. But over time, those greetings became quieter, then rarer, until one evening he walked in and found her asleep on the couch, clutching a drawing she had made of the two of them under a bright sun. Except the drawing wasn't finished. His side of the picture was just an outline. That night, Armaan sat beside her, staring at that incomplete sketch, and felt something inside him break. He realized he had been present in her life only in fragments, like that unfinished figure. A shadow. A promise he hadn't kept. The next morning, he tried to fix it in the only way he knew how. He requested fewer hours. But corporate systems aren't designed for personal crises. His manager sympathized, but the answer was the same. The company needed him fully committed, especially with a major project launching soon. Any reduction in responsibility would mean stepping down, possibly losing his position entirely. So Armaan did what most people would consider unthinkable. He chose his daughter. The resignation letter was short, almost painfully so. 12 years reduced to a few polite sentences. There was no backup plan, no savings that could carry them for long, and no guarantee he would find another job soon. But as he stepped out of the building that final time, he felt a strange kind of clarity. For the first time in years, he wasn't rushing somewhere else. He was going home. At first, the days that followed felt almost peaceful. Armaan began waking up with Meher, preparing her breakfast, helping her with school assignments, and sitting beside her during her treatments. He learned the rhythm of her medications, the subtle signs of her good days and bad ones, and the quiet strength she carried despite everything. There were small victories, moments that felt priceless. Meher laughing freely again. Her finishing that drawing and finally coloring in his side, this time with bright, confident strokes. Even the simple act of walking her to the park in the late afternoon sunlight felt like reclaiming something he had lost. But reality has a way of catching up. The bills didn't stop. Rent loomed. Medical expenses continued. Armaan applied for jobs every night after Meher fell asleep, sending out resumes, attending interviews, and waiting for responses that rarely came. The gap in his employment raised questions, and when he explained why he left, employers admired his dedication, but hesitated. Weeks turned into months. Savings dwindled. The sense of calm began to fracture under the weight of uncertainty. Armaan tried to hide it, but Meher was perceptive. She noticed the way he stared at unopened mail, the way his smile sometimes didn't reach his eyes. One afternoon, while sorting through bills at the small kitchen table, Armaan found himself overwhelmed. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Had he made the right decision? Was love enough to carry them through this storm? That evening, Meher handed him another drawing. This one showed the two of them sitting together under a tree, holding hands. Above them, in uneven handwriting, she had written, "You are my home." Armaan felt tears rise, but this time, they weren't from regret. They were from the realization that even in uncertainty, he had given his daughter something invaluable, his presence. Still, presence didn't pay rent. The turning point came on a quiet weekday afternoon. Meher was resting, and Armaan was in the kitchen trying to stretch their remaining groceries into something resembling a proper meal. The doorbell rang. At first, he assumed it was a delivery or perhaps a neighbor. But when he opened the door, he froze. Standing there, in a crisp suit that seemed out of place in the modest neighborhood, was Zavian Malik, the CEO of the company Armaan had just left. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Armaan's mind raced, trying to understand why someone like Zavian would be standing at his doorstep. It didn't make sense. CEOs didn't visit former employees, especially not those who had quietly resigned without much notice. Zavian's expression wasn't what Armaan expected. There was no authority in his posture, no corporate distance. Instead, there was something softer. Almost uncertain. He stepped inside after a brief invitation, taking in the small apartment, the neatly arranged but worn furniture, and the drawings taped carefully to the walls. His gaze lingered on those drawings, particularly the ones that featured Armaan and Meher together. Then he did something even more unexpected. He apologized. Not in a rehearsed, professional manner, but with genuine weight behind his words. He spoke about how he had only recently learned the full story behind Armaan's resignation. How the layers of management had filtered the situation down to a simple, personal decision, stripping away the reality of a father choosing his child over a career. But there was more. Zavian revealed a truth that changed everything. Years ago, before he became CEO, he had been in a similar position. His own father had been gravely ill, and Zavian had chosen his career over being there in those final months. At the time, it felt like the logical decision. The necessary one. But it was also a choice that haunted him ever since. Seeing Armaan's story had stirred something deeply personal. It forced him to confront a regret he had buried under years of success. And so, he had come not just to apologize, but to offer something different. Zavian explained that the company was undergoing a transformation. They were planning to introduce a new initiative focused on employee well-being and flexibility, something he wished had existed years ago. But he needed someone who understood the importance of that balance, not from theory, but from lived experience. He wanted Armaan back. Not in his old role, but in a new position designed around flexible hours, remote work, and a focus on building systems that supported employees facing personal challenges. It wasn't just a job offer, it was an opportunity to reshape the culture that had once forced Armaan into an impossible choice. Armaan listened in silence, his heart pounding. It sounded almost too good to be true. A chance to provide for his daughter without sacrificing the very reason he had left his job in the first place. But more than that, it felt like something deeper, a recognition of his struggle, a validation of his decision. After Zavian left, promising to give him time to think, Armaan sat alone in the quiet apartment. The weight of the past month seemed to lift slightly, replaced by a cautious hope. That night, he watched Meher sleep, her breathing steady and peaceful. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to imagine a future that didn't feel so uncertain. He accepted the offer the next day. What followed wasn't an instant transformation, but it was a beginning. Armaan started working again, this time from home, structuring his schedule around Meher's needs. He became a voice within the company for parents, caregivers, and anyone struggling to balance life and work. Slowly, things improved. Financial stability returned. The constant anxiety eased. And perhaps most importantly, Armaan remained present in his daughter's life, not as an outline, but as a fully drawn figure. The company's new policies began to take shape, influencing not just one organization but setting an example for others. What started as one man's difficult choice became a catalyst for change that impacted countless lives. And Meher? She continued to draw. Her pictures became more detailed, more vibrant. But one thing never changed: the way she always made sure her father was right there beside her, fully colored, fully present. If this story touched your heart in any way, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment. Your support helps spread stories that remind us of what truly matters.